The small gym was alive with noise that Tuesday evening. People milled about, adjusting their G's, tying shoelaces, or chatting casually before class began. It wasn't a fancy place, just a single open room with faded blue mats covering the floor and walls painted white years ago, now chipped and scuffed from constant use. Punching bags hung motionless in one corner, while dumbbells and kettlebells lay stacked neatly against another wall. A faint smell of sweat mixed with cleaning products lingered in the air, evidence of countless hours spent training there. Laura Bennett walked into the gym carrying a duffel bag over her shoulder. She looked around carefully, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. This was her first time here, and she felt both nervous and excited. With her husband Jack encouraging her to try something new after their recent move to town, Laura had decided to give jiu-jitsu a shot. Though she'd always been active, this was different, something more technical, more challenging. And honestly, part of her wondered if she could even keep up. She wore a simple white gi with a blue belt loosely tied around her waist. Her long, brown hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, revealing a face that seemed friendly but reserved. Laura didn't stand out much. She blended in with the other beginners who shuffled awkwardly, unsure where to go or what to do next. Still, her presence drew attention, not because of anything extraordinary about her appearance, but because she was new. New faces were rare in this close-knit community. Across the room, Ryan Dawson leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed over his chest. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with short dark hair and a confident smirk plastered across his face. Ryan had been coming to this gym for years and prided himself on being one of the best fighters there. He held a black belt, earned through hard work and countless matches, and he made sure everyone knew it. His reputation preceded him, and he enjoyed the respect or maybe fear that came with it. When Ryan spotted Laura standing quietly near the entrance, he raised an eyebrow. "Who's that?" he asked loudly enough for nearby members to hear. "New girl," replied Brian, a younger guy warming up nearby. "Name's Laura, just moved to town." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "Looks like we've got ourselves another hobbyist." He pushed off the wall and sauntered closer, his eyes scanning Laura from head to toe. "Hey, newbie," he called out, his tone playful but laced with mockery. "What brings you here? Finally tired of letting your hubby take all the glory?" Laura turned toward him, startled by the sudden address. For a moment she hesitated, unsure how to respond. Then she managed a polite smile. "Just looking to learn something new," she said softly, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside her. Ryan grinned wider, clearly amused. "Learn something new, huh? Well, good luck with that. Jiu-Jitsu ain't exactly knitting club." He glanced at the others, who snickered at his comment. "Besides, aren't you supposed to be, I don't know, baking cookies or whatever wives do these days?" The laughter grew louder, echoing off the gym walls. Laura's cheeks flushed slightly, but she kept her composure. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not in such an uncomfortable way. Still, she reminded herself why she was here, to challenge herself, not to win anyone's approval. So instead of retorting, she simply nodded and turned away, focusing on finding a spot to stretch. Nearby, Coach Miller watched the interaction with a frown. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Having run the gym for over 2 decades, he'd seen plenty of egos clash within its walls. But he also believed in creating a welcoming environment for newcomers, regardless of skill level. Something about Laura struck him as genuine, and he didn't appreciate Ryan's behavior. "All right, everyone." Coach Miller clapped his hands, together to get the group's attention. "Let's circle up, time to warm up." As the students gathered around him, he shot Ryan a pointed look. "And remember, folks, we're here to support each other, not tear each other down." Ryan rolled his eyes but stayed silent, knowing better than to argue with Coach Miller. Instead, he joined the rest of the group, though his gaze occasionally drifted back to Laura, curiosity flickering in his expression. What was someone like her doing in a place like this? As the warm-up exercises started, jumping jacks, lunges, and stretches, Laura focused intently on following along. She may have been quiet, but her movements were precise, almost graceful. Years of playing sports in high school and college had given her a solid foundation, and she carried herself with a natural athleticism that caught Coach Miller's eye. "You've done some training before?" he asked during a brief pause between drills. Laura shook her head. "Not really. Just played basketball and ran track when I was younger." Coach Miller nodded thoughtfully. There was something else there, something beneath the surface, but he didn't press further. Instead, he offered a few tips on improving her stance and footwork. Laura listened attentively, absorbing every word. Meanwhile, Ryan couldn't help but notice how seriously Laura took the session. Most beginners struggled to grasp even the simplest concepts right away, but she seemed to pick things up quickly, maybe too quickly. It irked him, though he couldn't quite explain why. Was it jealousy, doubt, or just plain arrogance? Whatever it was, it gnawed at him. By the end of the hour-long class, Laura was sweating and breathing heavily, but she felt accomplished. Despite the initial teasing and the pressure of being new, she'd managed to hold her own. Sure, she still had a lot to learn, but she'd taken the first step, and that was what mattered most. As she packed up her gear and prepared to leave, Coach Miller approached her. "You did great today, Laura," he said warmly. "Keep showing up and you'll surprise yourself." "Thanks," she replied, smiling genuinely for the first time that evening. "I'll definitely be back." Ryan watched her walk out of the gym, his arms folded once again. For reasons he couldn't fully understand, he found himself intrigued. Maybe she wouldn't last long, like so many others before her. Or maybe, just maybe, she'd prove him wrong. Either way, he decided, it would be interesting to see how things played out. That night, after returning home from the gym, Laura felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. She'd expected some challenges stepping into a new environment, but the teasing from Ryan had caught her off guard. It wasn't so much what he said. It was the way everyone else laughed along, like they all agreed she didn't belong there. Still, she reminded herself that she hadn't joined the gym to impress anyone. She just wanted to push herself, to rediscover parts of herself she'd set aside while focusing on family and work. Jack noticed her quiet demeanor as soon as she walked through the door. He was already in the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water when she came in. "How'd it go?" he asked, turning to face her with a smile. "It was okay," Laura replied, setting her duffel bag down by the entryway. She hesitated before continuing. "The coach seems nice, but there's this guy, Ryan. He kind of made fun of me." Jack frowned slightly, tilting his head. "What do you mean, made fun?" Laura shrugged, trying to play it down. "He joked about how I must be here because of you, like since you're into fitness, I should stick to baking cookies or something." She forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow even to her own ears. Jack's frown deepened. "That's not cool. Did anyone say anything to him?" "No, not really," Laura admitted. "Coach Miller gave him a look, but I think most people just laughed along. Honestly, I don't care what he thinks. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it." Jack stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not overthinking it. What he said wasn't right. But hey, if you ask me, it sounds like he's just insecure. Guys like that always have to put others down to feel better about themselves." Laura nodded slowly, appreciating his words. Jack had always been supportive, encouraging her to pursue things that made her happy. When they first moved to town, he suggested she try something new, to meet people and get out of her comfort zone. Jiu-Jitsu had seemed like a good idea at the time, but now she wondered if she'd bitten off more than she could chew. "Do you want to quit?" Jack asked gently, reading her thoughts. "No," Laura said quickly, surprising even herself. I mean, maybe it'll take some getting used to, but I don't want to give up already. I just need to focus on why I started." Jack smiled. "That's my girl. And hey, if anyone gives you trouble again, let me know. I'll come kick their butt." Laura laughed softly, feeling a bit lighter. "Thanks, but I think I can handle it." Later that evening after dinner, Laura found herself sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, staring at an old photo album she'd pulled from the bookshelf. It was filled with pictures from her childhood, snapshots of family vacations, school events, and lazy summer days. As she flipped through the pages, one particular photo caught her eye. A young Laura, standing proudly next to her father, both of them wearing karate uniforms. Her dad had been a Marine, tough and disciplined, but also incredibly patient when it came to teaching his daughter self-defense. She remembered those lessons vividly, the way he'd emphasized technique over strength, strategy over aggression. It's not about overpowering someone, he'd tell her. It's about using your mind, staying calm under pressure. Those words had stayed with her, even after she stopped training regularly. Jack noticed her reminiscing and sat down beside her. "Thinking about your dad?" he asked, nodding toward the photo. "Yeah," Laura said, her voice soft. "I forgot how much I loved learning from him. He taught me so much, not just about fighting, but about life, too." Jack leaned back, resting his elbows on the couch behind him. "So, what happened? Why did you stop?" Laura sighed, tracing the edge of the photo with her finger. "Life got busy, I guess. College, then starting a career, meeting you. Everything else took priority. I never thought about picking it back up until now." "Well, maybe this is your chance," Jack suggested, "to reconnect with that part of yourself." Laura looked at him, considering his words. "Maybe you're right, but it's not just about reconnecting, you know. I feel like I need to prove something, to myself, mostly, to show that I can still do hard things even if no one else believes in me." Jack reached out, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "I believe in you. Always have. Always will." The conversation lingered in Laura's mind long after they turned off the lights and went to bed. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream about what might come next. Could she really rise to the challenge? Would she find the courage to silence the doubters, or better yet, earn their respect? Over the next few days, Laura threw herself into practicing at home. She cleared a small space in the living room and began reviewing basic techniques she vaguely remembered from her youth. Footwork, balance, positioning, all the fundamentals her father had drilled into her. Jack would occasionally join her, mimicking her movements and joking about how clumsy he felt compared to her. His presence brought laughter and ease to the process, reminding Laura that she wasn't alone in this journey. One afternoon, while browsing online for tips, Laura stumbled upon videos of a famous female fighter named Kim Silva, known for her lightning-fast submissions and strategic brilliance. Kim had dominated competitions during her prime. Watching her move with such fluidity and precision inspired Laura deeply. She realized that Jiu-Jitsu wasn't just about physical strength. It was about intelligence, patience, and adaptability. These were qualities she possessed naturally. She just needed to trust herself enough to apply them. Feeling motivated, Laura decided to dig deeper. She messaged a former classmate from college who had briefly mentioned taking private lessons with Kim Silva years ago. To her surprise, the woman responded almost immediately, offering to share contact information for Kim's old coach. Though hesitant at first, Laura eventually reached out, explaining her situation and asking for advice. The response was encouraging. "You've got potential. Keep showing up, stay consistent, and the rest will follow." With renewed determination, Laura returned to the gym the following week. This time she carried a quiet confidence with her, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, especially with people like Ryan around. But she also knew that every step forward brought her closer to becoming the person she wanted to be. As she laced up her shoes and stepped onto the mat, Laura reminded herself of one thing. She wasn't doing this for anyone else. She was doing it for herself, for the little girl in the karate uniform, for the woman who refused to give up, and for the future version of herself waiting to emerge. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them head-on. Weeks passed and Laura became a regular at the gym. At first, people still whispered about her, wondering why she was there, if she'd stick around, or how long it would take before she quit. But Laura didn't pay much attention to the gossip. Instead, she focused on improving herself, showing up day after day no matter how tired or frustrated she felt. Slowly but surely, she began to notice changes, not just in her body but in her mindset too. She was learning to push through discomfort, to embrace challenges instead of avoiding them. Ryan, however, hadn't changed his tune. If anything, he seemed even more determined to mock her progress. Every time Laura stepped onto the mat, he made sure to comment loudly enough for others to hear. "Oh, look who's back," he'd say with a smirk. "Still trying to prove you're not. Just here for the cardio?" Laura ignored him most of the time, focusing instead on Coach Miller's instructions. But deep down, his words stung. They planted seeds of doubt that she had to constantly fight against. Was she really cut out for this? Could she ever measure up to someone like Ryan? One evening during a particularly intense training session, Ryan decided to take things further. As the group split into pairs for sparring drills, he approached Laura with a cocky grin. "Hey, partner," he said, clapping his hands together. "Let's see what you've got." Laura hesitated. Sparring with Ryan wasn't something she was ready for. Not yet. He was bigger, stronger, and far more experienced than anyone else in the room. But refusing would only give him more ammunition to tease her. So, with a deep breath, she nodded. "All right," she said quietly, stepping onto the mat. The match started cautiously. Ryan came at her aggressively, attempting to use his size and strength to pin her down. Laura struggled to keep up, feeling the weight of his body pressing against hers. For a moment, panic bubbled inside her. What if she couldn't escape? What if everyone laughed when she failed? But then, something shifted. Through the chaos, Laura remembered her father's lessons. Stay calm, think strategically, and let your opponent make mistakes. She stopped resisting so hard and instead focused on finding openings. When Ryan tried to trap her arm, she slipped, free. When he leaned too far forward, she used his momentum to create space. Each movement was small, almost imperceptible, but they added up. Coach Miller watched closely, nodding approvingly. He could see the potential in Laura, the way she adapted quickly, even under pressure. Though she wasn't winning outright, she was holding her own longer than most beginners would against someone like Ryan. Ryan, meanwhile, grew increasingly frustrated. He hadn't expected her to last this long. His usual tactics weren't working, and the crowd gathering around them wasn't helping either. Normally he thrived on attention, but now he felt the weight of their eyes on him. Why wasn't she giving up? Finally, after several minutes of grappling, the referee, a senior student assisting Coach Miller, called time. Both Laura and Ryan rolled apart, breathing heavily. Ryan stood up first, brushing himself off and muttering something under his breath. Laura remained seated for a moment, catching her breath and processing what had just happened. "Well done," Coach Miller said, offering her a hand to help her up. "You handled that well." "Thanks," Laura replied, still unsure whether she'd truly earned those words. Around them, the other students murmured amongst themselves. Some looked impressed, while others seemed skeptical. Ryan shot Laura a glare, clearly annoyed by the outcome. "Beginner's luck," he muttered loud enough for her to hear. Laura didn't respond. She simply nodded politely and walked away, heading to the edge of the mat to grab her water bottle. Inside, though, she felt a spark of pride. She hadn't beaten Ryan, not by a long shot, but she'd survived. And survival was its own kind of victory. Over the next few days, word spread about the match. People who had once dismissed Laura started paying closer attention to her. Even Ryan toned down his teasing, though he still avoided acknowledging her directly. It was as if he couldn't quite figure out what to make of her anymore. Despite the growing respect from others, Laura knew she had a lot of work ahead of her. Her technique was improving, but she lacked the confidence to execute moves decisively. She often second-guessed herself, hesitating when she should have acted. This hesitation cost her valuable opportunities during sparring sessions, leaving her frustrated and discouraged. One afternoon, after another difficult match, Laura stayed late at the gym to practice alone. She worked on basic transitions, drilling them over and over until her muscles burned. Jack arrived unexpectedly, carrying a thermos of coffee and a towel. "Thought you might need reinforcements," he said with a smile, setting the items down beside her. Laura paused mid-drill, wiping sweat from her brow. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. Jack sat down on the bench nearby, watching her move. "You don't have to pretend with me, you know. I can tell you're struggling," Laura sighed, dropping to her knees on the mat. "It's just, I know I'm getting better, but it doesn't feel like it. Every time I spar, I freeze up, I hesitate, and then it's too late." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe it's not about being perfect. Maybe it's about trusting yourself enough to make mistakes." Laura looked at him, surprised by his insight. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're putting so much pressure on yourself to get everything right that you're forgetting to enjoy the process. You're allowed to mess up, Laura. That's how you learn." His words resonated with her. She realized that she'd been approaching jiu-jitsu the same way she approached everything else in life, with perfectionism and fear of failure. But maybe it was time to let go of that mindset. Maybe it was okay to stumble as long as she kept moving forward. With renewed resolve, Laura returned to the gym the following week. This time, she told herself to focus less on outcomes and more on effort. During sparring drills, she forced herself to act quickly, even if she wasn't sure what she was doing. Surprisingly, this shift in attitude made a difference. She started executing techniques more confidently, surprising both herself and her opponents. Coach Miller noticed the change immediately. After one particularly impressive round, he pulled Laura aside. "Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it," he said with a grin. "You're starting to find your rhythm." Laura smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. For the first time, she believed that she truly belonged in the gym, not because of what others thought, but because she was willing to put in the work. Even Ryan began to soften slightly, though he still masked it with sarcasm. One evening, as Laura prepared to leave, he called out, "Hey, Laura, not bad today. Guess you're not completely hopeless." Though his tone was teasing, Laura detected a hint of sincerity beneath it. She turned to face him, meeting his gaze steadily. "Thanks, Ryan. Coming from you, that means a lot." Ryan blinked, caught off guard by her response. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, clearing his throat awkwardly, he muttered, "Yeah, well, you don't get used to it." As Laura walked out of the gym that night, she couldn't help but smile. Things were far from perfect, but they were changing, and that was enough for now. The announcement of the local jiu-jitsu tournament came as both a surprise and a challenge. Posters went up around the gym a few weeks earlier, inviting students of all levels to test their skills against competitors from neighboring towns. For many, it was an exciting opportunity to showcase their progress, but for Laura, it was something more. A chance to prove herself not just to others, but to herself. When Coach Miller mentioned the event during class, Laura hesitated. She had only been training for a few months, and the idea of competing terrified her. What if she embarrassed herself? What if she froze up like she sometimes did during sparring drills? The doubt swirled in her mind, making her chest tighten. But then Jack leaned over during a break and whispered, "You've got this. Why not give it a shot?" His encouragement gave her pause. Maybe he was right. After all, wasn't that why she'd started training in the first place, to push beyond her limits? So after much deliberation, Laura signed up. Word spread quickly through the gym, and soon everyone knew she planned to enter the tournament. Most reactions were supportive. People patted her on the back or wished her luck. But Ryan's response was predictably dismissive. "Really?" he said when he heard the news, raising an eyebrow. "You're actually entering? Guess we'll see how far beginner's luck can take you." Laura forced a smile, refusing to let his comment rattle her. "We'll see," she replied simply. "Yes." The tournament date approached. Laura threw herself into preparation. She practiced relentlessly, staying late at the gym and drilling techniques until her muscles ached. Jack helped by acting as her practice partner, even though his lack of experience often left him flailing awkwardly on the mat. Still, his enthusiasm kept her spirits high. On the day of the competition, nerves buzzed through Laura's body like electricity. The gymnasium where the tournament was held felt enormous compared to her usual training space. Blue mats stretched across the floor, surrounded by rows of folding chairs occupied by spectators. Banners hung from the ceiling advertising previous Events and sunlight poured through high windows, casting golden streaks across the room. Laura sat quietly near the edge of the mats, tying and retying her belt to calm her jittery hands. Around her, other competitors warmed up, stretching or practicing quick rolls. Some looked confident, while others seemed as nervous as she felt. Ryan appeared a short while later, his usual swagger intact. He glanced at Laura briefly before heading off to join the advanced division. "Good luck out there," he said sarcastically, though there was a flicker of curiosity in his tone. Was he wondering if she'd actually hold her own? Laura's first few matches were against beginners like herself. Though challenging, she managed to win 2 out of 3, earning enough points to advance to the semifinals. Each victory boosted her confidence, proving to herself that she could handle the pressure. By the time the semifinal round arrived, whispers rippled through the crowd about the unassuming woman in the white GI who kept surprising everyone. And then came the moment no one saw coming. Laura's semi-final opponent turned out to be Ryan, the GI. Tension in the air was palpable as they stepped onto the mat together. Spectators leaned forward in anticipation, eager to see how this matchup would unfold. Ryan smirked, clearly expecting an easy win. Laura, however, remained calm, focusing on her breathing and reminding herself of everything she'd learned. Sabag. Referee signaled the start of the match, and Ryan wasted no time charging forward. His strategy was straightforward: overpower her with brute force. But Laura stayed patient, moving fluidly to evade his attacks. When he tried to grab her arm, she slipped free. When he attempted a takedown, she countered with a sweep, nearly knocking him off balance. For a brief moment, Ryan faltered, caught off guard by her speed and precision. That split second was all Laura needed. With a sudden burst of energy, she transitioned smoothly into an armbar, locking her legs around his torso and applying pressure to his elbow. Time seemed to slow as Ryan realized what was happening. His eyes widened in shock, and within seconds, he tapped the mat frantically, signaling surrender. The entire gym fell silent. No one moved or spoke as the referee raised his hand to signal the end of the match. 14 seconds. That's all it took for Laura to defeat one of the gym's top fighters. Ryan rolled away, shaking his head in disbelief. Laura released the hold and sat up, her chest rising and falling rapidly as adrenaline coursed through her veins. She hadn't expected to win so decisively, or at all, but she couldn't deny the rush of triumph flooding her body. Spectators erupted into applause, breaking the stunned silence. Some cheered loudly, while others clapped politely, still trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Coach Miller approached with a wide grin, offering Laura a congratulatory handshake. "I knew you had it in you," he said proudly. Even Ryan managed a grudging nod as he stood up, rubbing his sore elbow. All right, he muttered, avoiding eye contact. "Guess I underestimated you." Laura smiled faintly, standing to face him. "It's okay," she said softly. "We all make mistakes." Her humility disarmed him further, and for once, Ryan didn't have a snarky comeback. Instead, he offered a small, almost imperceptible smile before walking away to regroup for his next match. By the end of the tournament, Laura placed second overall in her division, losing narrowly in the finals to a seasoned competitor. Still, her performance earned widespread respect, not just from her peers but from herself. She proved that she belonged on the mat, capable of holding her own against anyone who doubted her. That evening, as Laura packed up her gear, Jack found her and wrapped her in a tight hug. "You were incredible today," he said, pride shining in his voice. "I'm so proud of you." "Thanks," Laura replied, returning the embrace. "I couldn't have done it without your support, and everyone else's too." What started as a personal journey had become something greater, a testament to resilience, determination, and the power of believing in oneself. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, Laura knew one thing for certain: she was ready to face them head-on. The days following the tournament brought a noticeable shift in how people treated Laura at the gym. Before, she had been seen as just another beginner, someone who might stick around for a few weeks before disappearing like so many others. But after her stunning performance, especially her match against Ryan, No one underestimated her anymore. At first, Laura wasn't sure how to handle the newfound attention. People she barely knew started approaching her to congratulate her or ask for advice. Beginners sought her guidance during drills, and even some of the more experienced students acknowledged her skill. It was flattering, but it also made her feel uneasy. She didn't want to be put on a pedestal. She simply wanted to keep learning and growing. One afternoon, as Laura practiced a sweep technique with a younger student, Coach Miller approached her. "Got a minute?" he asked, gesturing toward the edge of the mat. "Sure," Laura replied, stepping aside and wiping sweat from her brow. Coach Miller smiled warmly. "I've been thinking about something," he began. "You've got a natural talent for teaching. You're patient, clear, and encouraging. I could use someone like you to help out with the beginner classes." Laura blinked in surprise. "Me? Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Coach Miller said firmly. "You've already been helping people without even realizing it. Why not make it official?" For a moment, Laura hesitated. Teaching was a big responsibility, and she worried she wasn't qualified. But then she remembered how much she'd appreciated having supportive mentors when she first started. If she could help others feel less intimidated or overwhelmed, wouldn't that be worth it? "I'd love to," she finally said, smiling. "Thanks for trusting me." From that point on, Laura became an assistant instructor for the beginner classes. At first, she felt nervous standing in front of a group, explaining techniques and offering corrections. But as the weeks went by, she grew more comfortable, finding joy in guiding others through their own journeys. The gratitude in their eyes reminded her of why she loved Jiu-Jitsu. It wasn't just about winning matches. It was about building confidence, discipline, and resilience. Ryan's attitude toward Laura also changed significantly. Gone were the sarcastic comments and smug grins. Instead, he seemed almost respectful. Though he still teased her occasionally, there was a newfound sincerity behind his words. Once, after a particularly tough sparring session, he approached her with a sheepish grin. "All right, I'll admit it, you're better than I gave you credit for." Laura laughed softly. "Thanks, Ryan. Took you long enough." He chuckled, shaking his head. Yeah, don't let it go to your head." Despite his teasing tone, Laura could tell he meant it. Over time, their relationship shifted from antagonistic to something closer to mutual respect. They weren't exactly friends, but they weren't enemies either. In fact, Ryan occasionally sought her advice, asking for tips on improving certain techniques. Each time, Laura responded graciously, happy to share what she knew. As weeks turned into months, Laura continued to grow, not just as a fighter, but as a leader. Her presence inspired others, especially women who felt intimidated by the male-dominated environment. One evening, a shy young woman named Emily approached her after class. "I just wanted to say thank you," Emily said quietly. "Seeing you compete and win made me believe I can do this too." Laura's heart swelled with emotion. "That means so much to hear," she replied. "Just remember, it's not about being the best. It's about showing up, working hard, and believing in yourself." Emily nodded, her expression brightening. "I'll try. Thanks again." Moments like these reminded Laura why she kept coming back to the gym. It wasn't about trophies or recognition. It was about making a difference, for herself and for others. Every time she saw someone push past their fears or achieve something they thought was impossible, she felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond anything she'd experienced before. Even Jack noticed the change in her. One evening, as they sat together on the couch after dinner, he commented, "You seem different lately. Happier, maybe." Laura smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I think I am. I used to worry so much about proving myself, to other people, to you, even to myself. But now I don't feel like I have to prove anything. I'm just doing what makes me happy." Jack kissed the top of her head. "That's all I ever wanted for you." Outside the gym, Laura's life began to reflect the same growth she'd experienced inside it. She carried herself with more confidence, spoke up more often, and tackled challenges with the determination she hadn't felt in years. Whether it was volunteering at community events or taking on new responsibilities at work, she embraced every opportunity to step outside her comfort zone. Back at the gym, Coach Miller frequently praised her contributions, telling her she was becoming an integral part of the team. "You're setting an example for everyone here," he said one day. "Not just with your skills, but with your attitude. That's rare." Laura blushed at the compliment, brushing it off with a laugh. "I'm just trying to pay it forward," she said. "Someone believed in me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to do the same for others." By the end of the year, the gym felt like home, a place where Laura belonged fully and authentically. She no longer cared about the whispers or judgments that had once made her doubt herself. Instead, she focused on lifting others up, creating a supportive community where everyone could thrive. And yet, deep down, Laura knew she still had room to grow. Jiu-Jitsu was a lifelong journey, filled with endless lessons and challenges. But for the first time, she welcomed those challenges with open arms, knowing they would only make her stronger. As she walked out of the gym one evening, duffel bag slung over her shoulder, she paused to glance back at the building. The lights were still on, illuminating the mats where countless stories of struggle and triumph unfolded daily. A smile spread across her face as she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Time passed quickly at the gym, and before Laura knew it, nearly a year had gone by since she first stepped onto the mat. So much had changed, not just in her own life, but in the lives of those around her. The gym itself felt different now, buzzing with energy and camaraderie. What had once been a place of doubt and insecurity for Laura had transformed into a second home, a space where she could truly be herself. One morning, as Laura arrived early for class, she noticed something pinned to the bulletin board near the entrance, a flyer announcing an upcoming seminar featuring a renowned female fighter named Kim Silva, the same woman whose videos had inspired Laura months earlier. Her heart skipped a beat. Could this really be happening? Was Kim Silva actually coming to their small-town gym? Excited, Laura rushed over to Coach Miller, who was organizing gear in the corner. "Did you see this?" she asked, pointing to the flyer. Coach Miller chuckled, nodding. "Yeah, I invited her. Thought it'd be good for everyone to learn from someone at her level." Laura's eyes widened. "This is amazing. Do you think she'll remember me? I reached out to her coach last year." He smiled knowingly. "I wouldn't worry about that. Just focus on soaking up everything you can while she's here." The day of the seminar arrived, and the gym was packed with eager students, some traveling from neighboring towns to attend. Kim Silva walked in wearing a sleek black gi, her presence commanding immediate respect. Though petite, she carried herself with an air of quiet confidence that reminded Laura of her own journey. During the session, Kim demonstrated advanced techniques with precision and grace, breaking each move down into simple steps anyone could follow. Laura watched intently, absorbing every detail. At one point, Kim called for volunteers to practice a complicated submission sequence. Without hesitation, Laura raised her hand. As they worked together, Kim offered personalized feedback, praising Laura's technique and offering subtle adjustments to improve her form. When the drill ended, Kim gave her a warm smile. "You've got great fundamentals," she said. "Keep pushing yourself, you're going places." Laura beamed, feeling a renewed surge of motivation. To hear such encouragement from someone she admired so deeply meant the world to her. After the seminar, Kim took a moment to speak privately with Laura. "Your coach told me about your story," she said, "about how you started late and stuck with it despite the challenges. That takes guts. Don't ever lose sight of why you began." Those words stayed with Laura long after the seminar ended. They echoed in her mind during training sessions, reminding her that success wasn't measured by belts or trophies. It was about staying true to herself and inspiring others along the way. In the weeks that followed, Laura continued to grow, as both a fighter and a mentor. Her role as an assistant instructor expanded, and she found herself leading entire classes on occasion. Beginners looked up to her not just for her skills, but for her humility and kindness. Even Ryan, who had once mocked her relentlessly, now sought her advice regularly, treating her with genuine respect. One evening, as Laura wrapped up a beginner's class, she noticed Ryan waiting nearby. "Got a sec?" he asked, his tone unusually serious. "Sure," Laura replied, curious about what he wanted. Ryan hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I just wanted to say thanks for everything. You didn't have to help me when I asked, but you did. And honestly, I don't know if I'd admit this to anyone else, but you're one of the best fighters I've ever seen. Better than me, probably." Laura blinked, surprised by his honesty. "Ryan, thank you. That means a lot coming from you." He shrugged, trying to play it off casually, but there was sincerity in his voice. "Anyway, just thought you should know." From that day forward, their relationship shifted even further. While they still teased each other occasionally, there was a mutual understanding between them, a bond forged through shared struggles and growth. As months turned into years, Laura earned her purple belt, a milestone that filled her with pride. But more importantly, she became a cornerstone of the gym community. Newcomers often cited her as the reason they decided to join, citing her patience and encouragement as key factors in their decision. Jack remained her biggest supporter, always, cheering her on from the sidelines. One evening, as they sat together watching old videos of her matches, he turned to her with a grin. "You realize you've come full circle, right?" "What do you mean?" Laura asked, tilting her head. "When we moved here, you were looking for something new, something to challenge you. Now look at you. You're challenging everyone else to be better. You've built a legacy without even realizing it." Laura laughed softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I guess I have, huh?" But deep down, she knew Jack was right. Her journey wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about creating ripples of change in the lives of others. Every time a beginner stepped onto the mat, every time someone tapped out with newfound respect, Laura saw the impact of her efforts. On the anniversary of her first day at the gym, Laura stood at the front of the room, leading a warm-up session for a group of eager participants. As sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden light across the mats, she paused to take it all in. The laughter, the determination, the sense of belonging. This was her world now, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. Before starting the drills, she addressed the group with a gentle smile. "Remember," she said, her voice steady and clear, "Jiu-Jitsu isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about believing in yourself no matter what challenges arise. Trust the process, stay patient, and most importantly, enjoy the journey." Her words resonated with everyone present, drawing nods and smiles from the crowd. Even Coach Miller, standing off to the side, gave her an approving nod. As the session continued, Laura couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come. From being the shy newcomer teased by Ryan to becoming a respected leader and mentor, she had defied expectations. Not just those of others, but her own. And though she still faced challenges, she embraced them with the same resilience that had brought her this far. By the end of the evening, as the gym emptied and silence settled over the mats, Laura lingered for a moment, savoring the quiet. She thought about her father, her husband, her friends, and everyone who had supported her along the way. Each of them had played a part in shaping the person she was today, and as she finally turned off the lights and walked out into the cool night air, she whispered to herself, "Here's to the next chapter.